question is specifically for Andrew. I'm just wondering how you got 3.5 staff members. Was it a strategic priority?
Yeah, so it's been a library priority for a couple of years and been increasing over time. And beyond that, it's just a slow negotiation. That basically is how it happens. So we started with 2 in May 2010, which were people that were myself and Sherry, who were left over from the previous group. And we've added other people incrementally just through borrowing them from other groups and eventually inheriting them as best we can.
So you're repositioning some staff positions?
There's an enormous amount of repositioning going on. Yeah, reorganizing the library and trying to phase out things that are less relevant now or don't need as many people as they used to. And so among our top 3 priorities for the library, data services is one of them, and this is a significant part of that. So,
Hi, thanks for your talks. I'm particularly interested in the work with graduate students, and Andrew, you mentioned that you had a whole series of different things you were doing with them, the portal, data management day. So how has the reaction among graduate students been, and what kind of support have you gotten from faculty about working with graduate students?
Mm-hmm. So we've always seen graduate students as a necessary group to focus on because they'll be the next researchers, right? So if we don't help them improve practices now, then we'll have the same problems pretty soon. Many of those activities that I mentioned are actually, they've come out of partnership with our VPR's office, which has a person who focuses on graduate studies. So he's the associate VP of graduate studies within that office, and he has an advisory group of graduate students that he calls on for many different issues. And throughout the course of a year or 2, they said the most pressing thing for them was data management. So through that, we've kind of spun out a lot of different activities and gotten a lot more attention. And so where to go with that? I think in general, we just find that graduate students are kind of caught in this chaos and flurry of needing to do things and not being given direction in how to do them around these kind of things like data management. They're kind of seen as peripheral and not core to the research. That's the attitude that we hear, at least. So a lot of these activities that we have resonate very much, and we get very high usage and attendance.
So how has the faculty reacted to those programs? Do you get a lot of support for it? Are they involved at all?
I don't know that the faculty are that aware. We definitely get some increased consultation and training requests from faculty as a product of the graduate students. So the graduate students will come and they'll use it, and then they'll go back and tell people, and then we get more faculty. But I don't know that we have a whole lot. I'm not sure if the faculty are pushing them. I think most of the time it's the grad students finding us on their own right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have it more interconnected, but I just don't think it's there yet.
Hi, I have a question for John Cobb. When you were talking about the Data One project and collecting the data from these various member nodes and making it interoperable and using the DOI, I was wondering if you did anything about the vocabulary part of it, which is always a problem if people are using different terminology.
Thanks. That's actually a big part of the question. And just to be clear, Data One is not a super collection, but rather it's an overlay of collections that remain independent. And so a barrier to reuse and a barrier to interoperability is these issues of data regularization. And we don't have the magic bullet. We have, I didn't spend a lot of time on it, but actually fully half of the project is, non-gearhead. It's best practices, training sort of activities. And we try to encourage that there. But also we try to develop ways to maintain vocabularies or do data crosswalks, but there's no shortcut there. We do have a working group on semantic integration, and they have taken a two-pronged strategy. One is to develop ontologies, and hopefully a development of a robust ontology would help span those problems. But then to also do more loose matching, term document matrices, natural language processing. And then if you talk to Deborah McGinnis, she's much more articulate about this than I am. And she heads the working group with Jeff Horsberg. But the idea is to couple those two and to begin to get some virtuous feedback to get something that's more helpful. But to be honest, that's a huge area of research. And I think it's an area where this collectivization actually offers an opportunity to make an advance. With a small data size, you have difficulty clearly identifying signals, but as the data size gets larger and larger, you reach kind of a thermodynamic limit where these peaks look really sharp, even if they're only statistical. And so, that's hand-waving, but we're hopeful to help. But it's not there at this point. There's no magic.
So Nick, I have a question for you about measuring the value of data, because this is an area I know nothing about. And I was starting to think about, are we looking at impact factor like we're looking at journal impact factor?
I hope not.
Or like the more my data is cited, I could use this for promotion and tenure?
I think one of the ideas is we want to be able to acknowledge and credit data producers. I think the slide that I didn't sort of get to was data producers and authorship's not a one-to-one mapping. It's much more dynamic. So I think the more that we develop, I want to stay away from this term alternative metric, but the more that we develop sort of a broader perspective as to how we quantify what it is to have impact, the better off we are, I think. So whether that's something like impact factors.
So as a data producer, though, how would I know like that value?
I'm sorry?
As a data producer, say I'm a scientist and I want to know that people are using my data, so I can say that they're using it a lot and something else is coming from it.
Sure. So without giving away too much, we have a proposal in right now to develop something we're thinking about as set level metrics. So it's very, very analogous to article level metrics in sort of the bibliographic world. But developing just, I think, a whole suite of indicators that tell us a little bit about how a particular set of data that's been deposited in an archive is accessed, used, browsed, that sort of thing. I think that there's no measure that's going to be, again, a silver bullet that's going to tell us why something's important, but we can, I think, cobble a lot together and sort of make statements that are more reliable than guessing.
No one else is going to ask another question, I will. Mary, how did you decide what institutions to talk to? Was it a range, or were they, what different kinds of institutions did you talk with first?
Some of the things I wanted to look at, like I said, I wanted to make sure that they were established programs so that they had at least like 5 years of looking and working and thinking about this. And then also I tried to consider public institution, private institution, land grant, just to try to get a range. But my group just kept getting smaller and smaller on its own. So there wasn't, in the very end, a lot of flexibility there.
And as you looked at the responses that you got, so you had directors, associate directors, and librarians. As you think about each group, what were the way? Did you see any differences in how each of those different groups looked at the present and the future? Did they all kind of have a unified view, or were directors kind of viewing things one way and the librarians in the trenches viewing it a different way? Or
I saw, that was one of my questions that I asked about to the administrators, is who's setting the vision? Is the vision coming from within the library or from outside of the library? And basically 4 for 4 said that it was a shared vision coming from, that the library was working with the larger institution, and that together they were working to develop services across the campus. And once I started speaking with the librarians in the focus group, that message was very clear, that this is something that we're moving towards. It's important and a priority for administration. They've communicated to that. We're on board, and it was kind of, we're all in this together, and the support is in place to make it happen.
Pretty good buy-in across the board.
I think that in most of the sites that I spoke with, I was talking with the librarians who were currently involved in the programs and services and actively working. And as ARL libraries, the staff at some of these institutes, we're talking like 200 to, over 400 librarians or staff, not necessarily librarians. I think just about every site indicated that not everybody within the library staff was prepared or saw this as value, that they didn't see where they fit in at that moment. And that was a challenge for leadership, was to get that out to everybody to see where they fit in. And as you mentioned, we need to stop doing some things and start funneling resources into this. So it was definitely something that the leadership talked about, and the librarians were very much aware of what was going on around them, the ones who are working in this area.
Thank you.
So I have my own dilemma with data, and we have our own solution, Dataverse, at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. And then there's Figshare, right? You talked about all metrics, and for our solutions, we actually don't encourage sharing as much as something like Figshare does, right? And I always think that if you do a study, essentially, if you deposit your data in an institutional repository kind of solution, as opposed to like Figshare, you'll find that because of the sharing, the data is cited probably, if you can count that as a site, is probably mentioned more often than being trapped almost in your institutional repository. So I'm wondering what you guys think about the differences between these tools, and where we're headed, because are we like shutting ourselves off from potential here of collaborating outside? Because the other one I wanted to mention too is GitHub as well, because that co-locates the software essentially with versioning, and also your data. You can version your data as well, and that's another potentially useful.
Yeah. And I think the sorts of traces that are involved in someone interacting with a Git repository are really rich and robust, and I think it's a place of a lot of fruitfulness and future work that I'm sure will go on. There's already been things like H-indexes proposed for Gits, which gives me pause again. But to address your first question, when you were asking it, I was thinking about sort of the Matthew effect of the most highly cited things tend to get cited again just because they're seen more often. And I wonder if we're sort of seeing that with a lot of proprietary sort of social media blasting, and that's sort of what I think of Figshare is doing. And I love Figshare. I use it all the time. I post a lot of my stuff there. But I think you're right. It's a dilemma for sort of the long-term perspective that we try to provide in a lot of institutional repository settings. I'm not sure I have a good answer for you, but it's a good question.
So I'll add, there's a feedback mechanism. You know, in high-performance computing, they have the epoch of mass extinction, where the attack of the killer micros decimated the field of high-performance computing, and now every computer that you see is essentially built off of commodity CPUs for economic reasons. And low-cost, low-entry, high return in terms of visibility solutions, like Figshare, for example, create this same sort of undercurrent in that if I'm a practicing researcher and I can get 80% of my data in a low curation, high availability solution like that, then it decreases the momentum for the other 20%. So there's a dynamic, again, going on. And I'm not sure what effect that has. But, you know, some curation, some deposition is better than none. But it also can erode the impetus for high levels and high quality. So, I don't know.
I think I take the approach of, if I tell a researcher, you know, you have these different options, not just one. If they want visibility, if they want to just put their data in a place where, you know, they satisfy a mandate, then they're happy with just the institutional repository. But alternatively, if they want to get more vision, you know, more visibility for their data, then these social media outlets like Figshare, and they're really great for that, as opposed to your own solution. You know, that's
And you know, you can take rich and in love, right? In some cases, you can do both.
Yeah.